The part that screwed us was making hardware for the first time. There's always a certain amount of slop in the manufacturing line that's like built in. Your first products always just have like issues, right?
Even with Apple, I don't buy first gen.
Exactly, because they're going to have problems.
Meet Ravi Kurani, president of Standard Water Corp, building the operating system for water and modernizing infrastructure with industrial AI.
Water is totally underpriced. We have not fixed up the infrastructure systems. Like you said, the pipes are 50, 70 years old. You've got Flint, Michigan. It would be on building the operating system for how we actually make sure that the next generations of water doesn't face a day zero event.
What would be like a day zero event?
Literally, you just go and turn the tap on and there's no water.
We also talk about how founders should do when selling their business.
I think for any founder who's like selling their business, it's obviously a bit of a heartache, right? Because you're kind of like, am I giving the baby to somebody too soon? Through that process, the only thing you can hope is the organization that you're giving it to will see a part of that vision through, co-developing this thing with their partner that they're selling to, right?
Multiple sources quote you calling it the stupidest idea ever to sell early stage to a government because it takes forever. Tell the full story.
We built the water diagnostic device and I tried selling it to the Indian government. Why it's the stupidest idea at that point in time, because
Ravi, it's so great to have you on the pod.
I'm happy to be here, man.
So you're one of my oldest founder friends. We met many, many years ago.
Yeah.
In San Francisco we met, and you're working on a very cool water detection device that ended up becoming Sutro.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think you're a really great guest to come on the pod because you basically built in water from every angle. You started as a pool boy at your family's business. You worked at a NASA jet engine project. You built an impacting investor CrunchBase, ImpactSpace, and sold it. Then you built Sutro and sold it to Sani Marc. And now you're doing two even harder things, building a Standard Water Corp and rolling up pool source businesses with Poolify. So here's the big first question. After 2 exits, why would you choose the messiest possible path, hardware, infrastructure, blue-collar services, instead of something clean like SaaS?
I didn't choose SaaS to begin with, man. Like I feel like if you're going to choose something difficult, you just have to once you solve that one thing, you're gonna go for the next, right? And so I'm not going easier.
Yeah. So like, what do you know about the real world and founders that Silicon Valley tends to ignore? And what did you learn the hard way about what it costs mentally, emotionally, operationally to build a category where you can't fake progress?
Faking progress in hardware is really, really hard. Right? Because if you're building something physical or you're pumping plastic out of a mold, you're making a PCBA, like an electronics chip to actually communicate with Wi-Fi so you can get information in. If that Wi-Fi chip doesn't turn on, if that plastic sitting inside of a swimming pool starts to leak, you're going to have a big problem. And so you, first of all, from like a hardware standpoint, you can't fake hardware. To kind of your more meta question of like, around a founder, how can't you really fake that? At the end of the day, if you're going to sell a technology like we did to Sani Marc, the patents have to hold water, right? No pun intended. But like we got acquired pre-prototype. We had, this Home Depot pipe and we were like, hey, this thing measures chemistry better than anything else out there. And like that thing just had to work. We had like chemical engineers look at it. We had a PhDs look at it. The patent had to make sense. And you can't fake that because like nobody's going to buy it if you do.
On Not Another Pod, we play a game. And so we're playing Jenga today.
Okay, cool.
Which is maybe the game version of building a hardware company.
Yeah.
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
So as the guest, you can take the first pull.
And do you have the rule you can't take it off the top? Is that like
I mean, no one's ever done that. I guess you could do that.
I feel like if we're talking about easy things, I should take the first.
I don't know how that works.
Let's do this.
So Pool Pro describes you growing up watching your dad build a pool and spa supply business into 30 plus locations, and you being conscripted into repetitive water testing so much you felt like a robot. So what did that childhood teach you about grit, obsession, and what did it mess up? Because for a lot of founders, the same thing that builds them breaks them down.
I like how they say conscripted me into a robot. That's funny.
Did you say that? Or did just
I think
our lovely producers like...
No, I think the Pool Pro article probably said that because it was a great lead into like, well, he was a robot at the store, so he then made a robot of himself or something. But anyways, working at my dad's pool store, I mean, we definitely, I think it taught me a lot of things. One, I did do a lot of water tests, right? Have you been to a pool store?
No, actually.
You ever like gotten your water tested at a pool store?
No.
So in like the Sun Belt in California, Arizona,
Yeah.
Texas, Florida, it's common practice. There's like a Leslie's Pool Supply. My dad used to have a chain called Magnolia Pool and Spa Supply. He was the king of pools down in Southern California.
There we go.
And what ends up happening is people like literally they'll bring in a sample of water like in literally like a water bottle, and they just give it to the guy behind the counter, and they're like, "Hey, what's wrong with my pool? Like it was green. I had a party. It was 4th of July. I had a party." And you have to get really good with making chemistry easy to understand, which is, number one. And the second thing is you have to like learn how to upsell, right? In a retail environment in the 90s and the 2000s, this was land pre-Amazon. And so like how do you sell Brennan that has a swimming pool? I know you have a daughter, you have a kid.
Yeah.
You should get the rubber ducky. You should get the extra like, swim floaties. And so like I think what I was taught a lot then was just customer service, customer experience.
Interesting.
And like how do you make and distill information such that it's like really, really easy for customers to understand, and it's something like chemistry is easier to understand. What broke me? I grew up with an immigrant Indian father. If anybody knows about living in Indian like tiger parents, you grow up with that. There's a funny story. I remember this. In Indian parents, my dad didn't keep the AC on in the pool store. And it'd be like Riverside, California in like the heat of, 110-degree weather. And I was like, I think customers will stay in the store longer because I just feel freaking hot if you just turn the AC on. And I like lowered the temperature, and it was interesting. We would just like via just being there, right? We had the physics of it being colder, people would hang out there more and ended up buying more stuff, right? And so I think like
Interesting.
a little bit of that back and forth was I guess what broke me to your question.
So on your site, you mentioned working on a NASA project around combustion efficiency and the swirl number. What did that environment teach you about constraints and feedback loops, and how do you relate that to founder burnout?
We did a project with NASA around jet engines. We wanted to make jet engines more efficient. When you're flying a plane, you obviously use jet fuel, and that jet fuel, if you look out your window, is swirling in a turbine, and that's where that swirl number comes from. How do you mix the gas to be more efficient, to burn more efficiently, was the project that we had. In terms of feedback loops, man, that was like the most gritty project that I've ever done, because you literally have to turn on this jet engine. We had like a mock jet engine, and you should turn it on at like 0 swirl number with like all just straight air. And then you test it, and you turn it up 1 notch, and you're like 1%, 99, 2%, 98. And you like literally just swept up this entire thing. And if you like forgot where you were, you mess up the data, or you put in too little fuel or too much, you have to like start all over again. And so like that was the grid around like feedback loops, that like if you're not methodical about how you're tracking data and how you're like actually turning up the volume on this thing, you're just going to end up like screwing this up, and then you can't submit your report.
Multiple sources quote you calling it the stupidest idea ever to sell early stage to a government because it takes forever. Tell the full story. What happened? What did it cost you? Time, money, morale? And what signals would you tell founders to watch when they're tempted to chase big institutional customers too early?
I was in India in 2011 after grad school, or in between grad school. And there was a small, like $20 million venture capital fund. It was the beginnings of what was called impact investing. So it was investing at like the intersection of profit and purpose. Now with JP Morgan, you see a lot of these like funds that actually have more ESG investments. That's kind of what was like the early days of what we were doing there. We primarily were looking at companies who catered to people who earned less than $2 a day. So they call this like the bottom of the pyramid. At $2 a day, you can't afford much, right? And so like you have to think about companies that are doing really, really interesting things in spaces that like products are cheaper. For example, we funded a company called D-Light Design out of Stanford. They made a really cheap solar lantern that would allow villagers in the evening that didn't have electrification there to be able to have actually electricity in their villages. So primarily women can actually study later at night, because there was a big issue with women having to work during the day, especially in like villages, and then not being able to study, to be able to like go to school. We funded a really cool startup out of Bangalore that was making, like back then with Motorola flip phones and text messaging, to text rural farmers when the weather was about to change. Through all of this, I ended up seeing that we got a lot of water filtration on our table, right? A lot of water filtration deals. We're like, hey, India has a big drinking water problem. We're going to solve the drinking water problem. And I'm like, how are you going to solve drinking water if you don't know what's wrong with it? Which was kind of the first idea of Sutro, right? That's kind of where the water diagnostics company initially came out with, of like, let me figure out how to solve water diagnostics. Because either you're using something like a test strip that's just super cheap and it's like prone with human error, or you have a $10,000 like really expensive lab system that somebody making $2 a day can afford. We built the water diagnostic device and I tried selling it to the Indian government, which is why it's the stupidest idea at that point in time, because like I was just a very immature founder. The Indian government is like fraught with red tape. And back then I was just like, I don't know how to make 1 billion or like 1 million of these things. And it like the scale of what I was trying to do just didn't make sense at that point in time. And then coming back to the US, when I pivoted the technology back to pools and spas, it just made a ton more sense. And so that's kind of the story of why that was the stupidest idea.
What's funny is it's all like timing, because now I feel like with robotics and supply chains and AI, it's like you can compress a lot of this stuff. And with 3D printing, you probably could. I feel like, I don't know, for some reason governments feel like more innovative these days, and like they're looking for more technology to adopt. So, it's so funny how trends can change, but maybe you just have to be more of a tenured founder to be able to pull it off, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Or just still selling to the Indian government is
20 years, 15 years later. Yeah, which probably would have killed me at that point in time. I don't think the company would have
Did you ever sell to the Indian government?
No, we didn't. In the acquisition to Sani Marc, the goal was to eventually kind of go back to like the initial impetus of why we formed Sutro. But it's a lot of what I'm doing now. That's kind of the hopes of what I'm trying to get into.
So what's the most interesting Sutro fact? You sold a patent prototype. One account of Sutro's sales says you didn't have a fully developed product. You had a microfluidic chip patent prototype and 150,000 for Kickstarter sales and like $1.5 million raised. How did you sell something that's not done? And what did the buyer actually buy? Technical IP, team, distribution, the narrative. And emotionally, did it feel like a win, a relief, like you were selling the dream too early? Like, would love for you to talk about that. Because like I was also like your friend a lot of that time too. So like I remember that as well. Like you going through it. Yeah.
It was, I think for any founder who's like selling their business, it's obviously a bit of a heartache, right? Because you're kind of like, should I just do this myself? You're always at this decision point of, am I giving the baby to somebody too soon? And through that process, the only thing you can hope is the person the organization that you're giving it to will see a part of that vision through. And I think sometimes it's a bit also naive and selfish for a founder to also fully weight what they're saying as the only true narrative, because they're co-developing this thing with their partner that they're selling to, right? And so I think part of it also has to be at the same time of holding true to what you're building, to also letting go to the person that you're selling it to, so you guys can build this thing together. So that's kind of the first feeling that like comes to mind. The actual story, we did sell pre-prototype. What we tactically had, like literally what we had was, we had gone to Home Depot and we had purchased I think it was like a 3-inch piece of PVC, just like pipe. We'd cut it. It was about the size like of my arm. And inside there, we had just like fed, kind of looked like a pipe bomb, honestly. We had like fed all of this electronics and
fly with
chemistry. It was interesting to fly with. I had flown with it twice. And
did you go get like into like the advanced screening room?
I did, yeah. I mean, I get put into the advanced screening room anyways, but now, I definitely got put into the advanced screening room. This was actually, we were flying to Israel with this. And it was
shit,
like,
bro.
That was like a story that was tough in itself. Luckily, my Google profile is what saved me, actually.
Really?
My SEO, yeah.
Well, just because they were able to like look you up in security and be like, oh.
They were just like, well, what is this thing? And I'm like, dude, just Google me. Like literally just Google me. And at that point in time, we had done like TechCrunch. We'd kind of like, I had a profile. And they looked it up and they're like, is this you?
So TechCrunch saved you.
Yeah, TechCrunch saved me.
Wow.
So yeah,
I can't believe you flew with that shit, dude. Like, Jesus
I mean,
Christ.
we were going through an acquisition offer in Israel. I had to like take the prototype over there. I couldn't not take it. So
I'd be like, here's a video.
Yeah, that would have not worked. Yeah, we took that to Israel, but that's what we had. So we had this pipe with a bunch of like electronics and chemistry stuff inside, and we had a series of patents that we had filed. And so it was papers plus like 4 of these pipes that we had made, and a bunch of data, because we like knew that this thing could have been made. We were about to go into manufacturing, right? So we were like talking to manufacturers in like Mexico and the US and China. And that's like a big bill to pay, right? You can either go and like fundraise all of that, or at this intersection, I was like, well, there's a company that's willing to like help us get off the ground. And luckily, like COVID hit, I think a year and a half or 2 years later. And so like we probably would have been DOA going through that process when we would have fundraised then.
Mm.
And so in a sense, I think the acquisition actually saved us. Like I think
It's interesting because I could have also seen COVID massively accelerating your business because everyone was like buying houses and like staying at home and pools and like maybe didn't want to have pool cleaners come by.
Yeah.
You know? Like it's so interesting. Like we had a business, like I was an early product person at a company called Rhino at the time during COVID. And at one point we were like, oh my God, who's like going to rent up? Like no one's going to change apartments. And like we were like, we're not going to have a business. Like, no one's going to change apartments. And then it ended up being like, actually, everyone's going to move apartments and everyone's super cash sensitive.
Yeah.
And so, like, the business was like, went crazy.
Yeah. The business did go crazy because everybody was in their backyards. They were stuck at home. The part that screwed us was making hardware for the first time. So if you ever heard of any hardware story like the Oura Ring or the first iPhone, there's always a certain amount of slop in the manufacturing line that's like built in, and your first products always just have like issues, right? They have like waterproofing issues or whatever.
I never buy, even with Apple, I don't buy first gen.
Exactly, because they're going to have problems, and like Apple has to burden that bill of those problems of those phones that you're not buying because somebody's dealing with it, and that's why would have been DOA is because we would have been a first-time hardware company. We would have done our first run. We would have made that first phone, been out in market. COVID would have like swept us up, and then we probably like would have had. We did have a few issues, and like having to deal with that with venture dollars in the middle of COVID may have been a problem.
Oh damn! It's funny how the way like life and timing works out with that shit, huh?
Yeah.
You said 2019 was when you got the first Sutro devices after selling, and you emphasized why real reagents, not cheap sensors and Wi-Fi, matter for accuracy. What part of being acquired founders don't talk about? Identity loss, control, recalibrating your ambition, and what did it teach you about building durable hardware in a legacy industry?
I think what changed in that COVID time period, right when we launched, was we initially had a business model to sell through Sani Marc, right? Sell through distribution in Canada. And we actually launched in March of 2020. So like it literally was like on the day that I think California shut its doors.
Yeah.
We like immediately pivoted our entire model. We like hopped into Shopify because we had this big distribution model. We were just going to like store it in California, do a little bit of tests, and then like do some B2C stuff, but eventually like sell it into the Canadian market. And that whole thing got basically upended. We had to pivot to B2C. We opened up a Shopify site. We like had to figure out how to do logistics and distribution during COVID. And like in that time period, it like really was a bit, I guess frightening would be the word. You're kind of you're kind of alone, not only because of you actually selling your company, but now you're like in the middle of COVID when you had this parent company up in Canada. You can't also like just fly up there and talk to them.
Yeah.
And now you have all this inventory here and you're like, and now I'm executing an entirely new business model that we hadn't planned for because of COVID. It was a boon, right? It helped us because people were in their backyard, sales went up. But it was like a pretty tough time at that point in time when we like everything was happening all at once and we had to like pivot the business model. In terms of control, I felt like working with Sani Marc was great. Honestly, like the CEO Pierre, the VP like Yvon, they were great. They were like absolutely amazing to work with. I felt like they gave me a lot of kind of like technological power. They gave me like a lot of ability to actually stress and see what the product could do, would do. I think just this initial kind of COVID shakeup pushed us down this path of not being able to distribute the product into distribution. That kind of goes back to your first question about like using reagents versus off-the-shelf sensors. Sutro is a robust like lab grade product, right? We were probably the only product on the market that could have achieved like an NSF certification, which basically means that it can be used to measure drinking water without having any sort of human intervention. There's not like a lot of products that are capable of doing that. And so we built an extremely premium product using reagent chemistry, which is like top of the line stuff that like people in laboratories use. And we built it at a price point that consumers could digest. But it was meant for the commercial market. And so I think, a lot through kind of switching the business model, selling it into like the B2C side, just ended up pushing us down a path that probably we like maybe shouldn't have been on, or we should have like ratcheted back to commercial quicker. But that's kind of the way that the ship was floating after COVID.
That's so cool. What did like, for me, I'm not in supply chain or hardware, but I remember during COVID being like shocked that, I mean, it was just kind of crazy to see the disruption within supply chains to even like not like complex products like you could understand, but like toilet paper. Like, can you tell me a bit about like take us back in time to that time? Like, what is something that you think would surprise us the most about global supply chains, and tell us a bit about like how it was building hardware product like in that chaos.
Our lead engineer, Alex, sent me a picture of a Time magazine cover right as soon as like COVID was hitting.
Yeah.
And on there was a picture of a syringe with the like Moderna or Pfizer vaccine. At the bottom of it was 3 letters called, I think it was like HSW, which was our syringe manufacturer. Like in the Sutro, we had syringes that had the like liquid reagents that would like be pushed up.
Yeah.
And they were using those syringes for the COVID vaccines.
Yeah.
Alex is like, I don't think we're going to be able to get supply of these syringes. And like, I don't know how we're going to sell our units, because we had this consumables model that had these like reagents, these liquid reagents, and we had to like sell those, and we needed those syringes.
That's crazy.
And so like we couldn't travel. We couldn't go to China. Luckily, our manufacturer was able to source like kind of a Chinese equivalent that they were using for, the vaccines over there. And they actually had tons of supply of it. And so like we were able to buy them, but that came with its own set of challenges because we had built the entire calibration around these like HSW syringes.
Yeah.
And now we had like different volumes, different outputs, like the whole thing had to change. And so we had to do everything remotely. But like that was the first thing that I remember COVID like entirely disrupted from a supply chain perspective. On top of that, we faced the same problems that everybody else did. Like electronics were in short supply. So finding the ST microchips that we use to actually build out the actual Wi-Fi was in short order. We, like I said, launched in March of 2020. We had gotten our first shipment in, but we were still continuing manufacturing for the summer season. And like our chips, all of a sudden, like the bottom just fell out. Like we just couldn't get access to them. And the vendors that we were buying from were just like holding supply because they like had other people that they were going to sell to.
And they're just like, oh, the price is going to go up.
Yeah, the price is going to go up. And so like now the price actually went up too much for us to be able to even afford our margin. So now we had to make like a product change. But the issue was that we were already FCC certified. So like you can't just change electronics if your board's already been certified by the FCC. That was a mess. That was like mess number 2. And then in the middle of all this are like plastic injection molding. Like I said, Gen 1 products always have a little bit of issue, right? Which why you don't buy the first iPhone. We had a little bit of a waterproofing problem, right? We're literally putting electronics in the water. And we tested, we like did a saltwater, we tested this thing to like a 10-year lifespan. And what we realized is when people open up the device, they do it inside their swimming pool, and a little bit of drops that end up falling from like the top of the device into the Sutro is enough to cause a little bit of humidity, which then shorts the board. Problem number 3. And so like now we're like in the middle of trying to like suss out this waterproofing issue, the electronics boards, and then our freaking syringes, which are being used for COVID vaccines. And like it was, and then we're pivoting our business model because now we're on Shopify and doing e-commerce versus going into like commercial and distribution.
You make us lowly like software founders just feel like the biggest bitches.
Yeah, that's why you're like, why do you want to go into SaaS?
Like it's like, oh, my marketing site went down, and you're like, yeah, let me tell you about that.
Let me tell you about that. Yeah, hold my beer. Like, those were the 3 problems with the supply chain that like we directly felt.
Well, what do you think like people would be most surprised by, like the supply chain?
The price of containers, honestly. Like we solved like everything else, but like literally then we're like, hey, can you just move our stuff across the Pacific? And they're like, prices for containers have gone up 5x.
Dude, the thing I don't understand why, like, I don't understand why more people don't track this is the price of containers.
Yeah.
It's such a leading indicator for inflation.
Totally.
Like that and oil. Like obviously there's supply chain impacts with the tariffs globally. Can you tell me a bit about like how is that like another kind of COVID for hardware manufacturers, or like how is that sort of impacting businesses now, do you think?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we were directly hit by the first tariffs, and we're also hit by the second tariffs. We were an electronics product, right? A lot of the electronics products coming out of China in particular were hit by the tariff. The part that was the most erratic was how much it changed, like week over week or month over month. And it just became really hard to quote bulk orders for people that were going to buy like a lot of Sutros. And so like during that time period, we like legit were now starting to pivot back into commercial again. And here's problem number 4, right, or 5, whatever we're on now. Now we get slapped by the tariffs because we're putting all these we're putting these like
Yeah.
invoices and these quotes together, and we're saying, hey, large pool company, like you should buy 1,000, or you're like a pool service company, buy
Yeah.
1,000 of these and put these in your pools. And we're like, oh wait, hold on, like prices have increased by 25%, and like we sometimes ate the margin. And then on some days the margin would come back, and then other days the margin was so bad that like we'd have to pay you to buy the product. And like it just like you just can't run business that way.
And so, like, as a big company, do you just sort of streamline? Do you just sort of like bake it in, or like what do you think most businesses are doing?
Big companies have inventory, right? I think you
Yeah.
didn't see a lot of like the impacts of this stuff for the first 2 or 3 quarters because we do have warehouses, we do store stuff, right? Sutro's even we had like a handful, a few thousand units that were sitting there, so we could use that as buffer. But as soon as you have to order more units, depending on where in the calendar you land, like you're either having to like bite down on your cash flow because now you're having to pay 25% more on your COGS, or like you just can't sell because you're like, I just don't even know if I can order. And with hardware, again, you can't pump code out like in a night. It takes me 6 months to like start a manufacturing
Yeah.
line, get the electronics, get the plastic pumped, get the thing in a container, and then it takes like a month and a half, 6 weeks to get them over to the port of LA.
So do you think most people will just look out 6 months and like if I was building a new hardware product today, I would just say, maybe like who knows what's going to happen with tariffs? I'm going to put like a 30% increase on top of this whole thing.
Yeah, that's what was happening a lot
Yeah.
of times, especially for like newer startups.
Interesting. And then you also said something about like a chip shortage, and I know those are like pretty basic chips, but like obviously there could be a chip shortage like for AI models and shits in your car and all sorts of stuff. Can you tell me a bit about how chips are rate limiting factors and like where do chips come from, why they're so important in hardware, and like how they're a rate limiting factor?
Chips in any sort of smart hardware is the heart and the brain of like the device. If you look at your iPhone, if you look at like the Aura Ring, if you look at these mics that we have, they have chips in here that are like modulating the like output that you have from the actual mixer over there to see like it's catching sound properly. If you can't buy that chip, Shure can't make this mic. If Aura can't buy this like flexible PCBA that goes in their ring, you if your Whoop can't buy that, like you can't make the product.
So is it a supply chain issue because we're not building enough fabs, or do fabs just take too long to build?
I think for like generic chips, it's actually not a problem. Like for folks like ST Micro, like your run of the mill Wi-Fi chip is pretty readily available, and actually there's like a lot of non-ST chips that you can buy that are off the shelf. I think the real supply right now issue is coming from the more higher quality chips, like the NVIDIA chips. And those do have that. Like the rate limiting factor there is that we just don't have enough foundries to do that, and the foundries are primarily located in like Taiwan and China. Just because they've spent the last decade to 15 years building chips to begin with, so they just have this like upswing of being able to know how to actually make.
It's so wild that NVIDIA, like, and they're like, I was a gamer back in the day, like best graphics cards.
Yeah.
And then they were making gamer graphic cards and like, well, you can actually mine Bitcoin really well with these. And then it's like, actually, they're perfect for, AI.
Like AI.
Yeah, AI. And like, they just literally like decimated like all their other competition.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's unreal. Did you ever go tour NVIDIA or anything like that? Or
I haven't. I've been to many PCB fabs. Like I've been to Pick and Place, like our PCBs were made. They're super cool.
That's cool.
You should I totally tell anybody to visit one. They have these reels of these like little tiny resistors and like stuff.
Yeah.
And then you can basically put these files for PCBAs on these machines, and they're like little 3D printers. They'll just like go and they'll like grab them so quickly, and they'll just populate these boards, and then they like solder the whole thing, and your like board is ready.
How much has 3D printing changed the hardware game?
It has and it hasn't.
Okay.
It has from a prototyping standpoint. You can prototype a lot quicker without having to like actually cut aluminum or cut steel.
Yeah.
But the price per unit of plastic is a lot cheaper when you actually just cut steel or cut aluminum to like punch the same thing like a water bottle over and over and over again. If you're 3D printing water bottles, those would be like really expensive. And so
Interesting.
in volume, molds and like pumping plastic still is much more cost effective than like 3D printing.
It is China, like how far ahead is Chinese manufacturing over like anywhere else in the world?
Oh my gosh. Like I was just there a few months ago actually. China's living in 2060. It's
That's
like
crazy.
absolutely ridiculous. Like
That far?
their EV infrastructure is like the equivalent of like our gas stations. Like you can just all the cars are EV there, first of all.
Yeah.
And so they just like they've built up this infrastructure that like makes sense. Their payment methodology, like their like Alipay and WeChat Pay is just like super seamless.
Yeah, that's been that way for like 10 years, 20
But
years.
now you can play the lottery by like tapping on things like in elevators. It's really cool. I don't know what he was saying half the time, but like I think I was winning money. But yeah, their cars absolutely like are ridiculous. They have like 150K BYD. That's like the equivalent of like a 500K car over here. That's like an SUV with like screens and like like a massage chair.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about like the actual supply chain, like actual manufacturing?
The supply chain is the equivalent. The only way I can like liken it to is building a startup in Silicon Valley. Right? If you're building an AI startup in Silicon Valley and you can like drive down to Sand Hill Road and like talk to A16Z because like the ecosystem is there, you're much better at doing that than like in Nashville, Tennessee. I mean, you can build a startup in Nashville, Tennessee, no harm against that, but like it's probably better to build a startup in the Bay, right? Generally speaking. It's probably better to build hardware in Shenzhen because like you can just, as you can drive to Sand Hill Road, you can drive up to like Dongguan or you can like go to like a chip factory or wherever. And like they all know each other. And so they're like, hey, for this water product, we know a chipset that's like already making waterproof materials for whatever, for these microphones or for outdoor speakers, which are like, comparable to your product. And so like, we should introduce you to them. And so like this, it's just like shaking hands and it's like angels investing in Series A and like, it just works.
What do you think that means for US-Chinese relations? Like is all the like political back and forth just like banter or like just people being loud and like, do you think like our supply chains are pretty integrated or like if China is in like 2060 compared to us in a lot of ways, like what do you think that means?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to manufacture in the US when we first started Sutro. It was extremely tough. Like I couldn't find, and especially growing a startup, like you just kind of want like ease of doing business because you're dealing with a million other problems. And China just has that infrastructure available, right? So to your question of like comparing US manufacturing to Chinese manufacturing, I think the US is really, really great at like premium engineering. I think we have like amazing engineering talent. I just don't think that we have the infrastructure, and that's probably due to policy over the last 25 to 30 years of outsourcing a lot of that over there. They just ran the miles.
Making us a service economy, I think, was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Like you have to build shit.
Yep.
So,
and we just don't anymore. So like if you just don't, then you can't go and find people that do. Like the physics of the situation is just that they just don't exist until they do.
So what do you think that means for robotics?
I mean, it's continuing to be built in China. I think there's a big hub in like Guadalajara in Mexico that's being built out. It's been being built out since like the 90s or the 2000s, but it's a lot more contract manufacturing and assembly. But I am seeing a lot more.
Dude, Guadalajara is so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Like it is a great city.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's like very luxurious. Like you go down and you're like, oh my God.
And you can manufacture down there.
That's
so
crazy.
It's a closer spot than Shenzhen.
Yeah. So you wrote about using superhuman style PMF survey to figure out what to build and what to market, specifically mentioning we had been acquired and needed an architectural blueprint. What's your no BS definition of product market fit in hardware, consumer, chemistry? What are your leading indicators that actually mattered, not vanity metrics?
Superhuman has this PMF. Have you heard of the Superhuman PMF survey?
No.
They have this question of how disappointed would you be if this product did not exist? Like that's the first question that they ask. They don't ask like an NPS score of would you rate this from 0 to 10, whatever. It's how disappointed would you be if this product did not exist? Very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed. And what that allows you to do is you can segment the very disappointed people with like these people, if you took this product away, would be like they would like hate their lives. Like this thing is notably better for them than them not having it. And what you can begin to do is what we started to do was we took all of the people that said very disappointed, and then underneath that we would ask them questions of like, what would make this better? What do you like about it? And we double clicked on the things that they liked and made those stronger. And the things that they wanted in there, those would become the features on like the dev pipeline, the hardware or software. And the people that like said that they would not be disappointed, what we would do is actually extract their demographics, and then we would stop spending marketing spend on people like those. And so that just really helped us like bias into the people that would be very disappointed and then make the features that would make those people happier. And so that's my kind of no BS definition that comes from Superhuman, the like email.
I like that framing.
I forget the founder's name, but he came up with it.
That's great. So in your Poolify thinking, And from your team's post, the thesis is basically data is only half the battle, and fixing pools doesn't solve better by sensors alone. It's solved by operational infrastructure. What did you learn the hard way that made you say, okay, if I actually want to fix this industry, I have to buy roots and build service infrastructure?
We started selling Sutro to pool service technicians. And I realized that understanding chemistry, because chemistry is the lifeblood of owning a swimming pool,
Mhm.
is like paramount to running a service route. And through that process, I was like, why don't I just own more of the stack, right? We're selling this hardware device, and like a pool guy is taking the bulk of the revenue from servicing Brendan's pool.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what just like led me into Poolify. I'm like, if we can own the actual pool service companies and then integrate application and like hardware and then stitch all this stuff together with like AI, we'll just be the best pool service company out there because nobody else is thinking like this.
I love that. So Poolify reportedly bought its first pool company in Southern California and closed its second acquisition in December 25, aiming to build a modern system of record for the industry. How are you structuring these deals? Seller financing, earnouts, keeping local brands? And what's the operational playbook? Centralized dispatch, chemicals, customer comms, and then layer protective maintenance and chemistry? Like how does it work? Like what's the automation?
Yeah, we're first of all buying south of where mid-market private equity is buying. So typically you would need, and you would know this, you need like 2 million or a mil or
Yeah.
more in profit. And so what we do is we buy really, really small routes that are like less than 250K, 200K in like top line. This means that you have anywhere between like 50 pools to 200 pools. This does two things. One is it gives us we can call it the labor force, right? The folks that are actually cleaning the swimming pools, um, because they have smaller routes, they're excited to grow them.
Mhm.
And so we partner with the actual folks that we buy. So part of your question, we do seller-based financing um, with people that want to help us grow the routes. And then what we do is we actually do tuck-ins with people that are that are like looking to retire, because a lot of the market is looking to retire. And those people then get tucked into this like younger person that is willing to stay and grow the route. In terms of technology, I can't say too much here because it's still under embargo a little bit. We're building really interesting hardware so that service technicians can use their hands is kind of one thing I want to say.
Mhm.
All the current technology out there requires you to have a cell phone so you can like actually take pictures of stuff and like
Yeah.
upload that. If you're a pool guy, your hands are wet, right? Like you can't
Yeah.
use the phone. You're like you can't touch the screen. So how do you build hardware such that the person that's using it is better equipped to actually gather the data that you need? And then we're also, like the PMF, looking at where is the biggest problems. Two biggest problems in the current pool service market is one, the guy just doesn't show up. And secondly is they don't have eyes on the pool in terms of like chemistry maintenance, your circulation
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so getting the guy to show up is a very simple thing, right? Like we partner with people that we know are going to show up, that they're invested to actually grow the routes. We do have application, like people check in and check out of pools when they're there. In terms of the eyes on the pool and the pool not going green, that's where the chemistry comes in. And so I have history with building robots for chemistry. We're using a slew of off-the-shelf sensors as well as technologies that already exist in the market to basically stitch that together to build a cohesive software that allows the technician to not use their hands, to be able to give us the input of information that makes sense, to tell us that they're actually showing up, and then making sure that pools don't go green so we have eyes on the pool without the actual technician being there.
Super cool. So Standard Water's site says you're modernizing water via hardware and sensors, AI, integrated delivery, with directives like autonomous sanitation, advanced telemetry for PFAS detection, and agricultural intel. Can you translate this in just plain English and business model turn? Who pays you? What do they buy? How do they avoid becoming another pilot program graveyard and water infrastructure?
Yeah. Standard Water was my kind of, I guess, midlife crisis foray into what happened post Sutro, right? So like we obviously we're acquiring the routes, we're rolling those up. But part of Standard Water is very simply we're a consulting firm that works with large water companies. We're working with some of the largest water sanitation companies out there to do things like autonomous water chemistry monitoring. We're building like multi-tenant software to better manage, water in like kind of like a more
I feel like
national global setting.
so many big cities need this.
Yeah, for sure.
Like New York's water is very nice because it's like, coming from these like beautiful lakes and things.
Yeah.
But like, I swear sometimes out here, like I live in like upstate a little bit, and it's like you get this hard water and all sorts of different stuff. And I feel like it changes over time too. So like it just doesn't feel very consistent.
Yeah. And I think
and the old pipes, like
exactly. And this actually comes back full circle to where we started this, right? Is I think now as a founder, I'm mature enough to sell to larger companies, to municipalities, to like cities. The like 3D printing robotics has really advanced, and me knowing how to actually make stuff, because I've done it once, allows us to make stuff quicker. And then building software for Sutro, like we know, and with like agentic AI, with everything that's out there now, you can spin up stuff really, really quickly. And so I think it's like Standard Water is on the kind of stepping stone to eventually get to like solve that issue. Right now, it's nurturing Poolify, making sure we kind of understand that model, understand water chemistry, understanding how to build, and then eventually, I want to still get back to the India municipality world.
I would love to do a very high end water company because I get like water delivery, and I like really like the taste of water. My wife and I are the same way, and I just feel like there's no like old like. I get marketed all these filters and all this stuff, and it's just like hard to know like what's the best thing out there. And like
I got stuff for you if you want to chat about
it.
No,
No. Like you should plug it now. Like the people who are like water people. Like,
I mean, if it's not my product, but like if folks
like this is not an ad. Like I'm like I think a lot of people are into water, into health, into longevity. Yeah. Like what are some of like the best? What's the cheapest, easiest thing you can do if you care about clean water? And then like tell us some of the like caviar dream stuff.
So at your home, the easiest thing you can do is to get a reverse osmosis sensor or reverse osmosis machine.
Okay.
RO machines, if you own the place, you can go ahead and pipe it in.
Yep.
And it's perfect. It takes out PFAS, which is like the up and coming pollutant that's in water. It's primarily found in like Teflon and Gore-Tex. They call it the forever chemical. It removes microplastics. It removes a lot of the chemicals that the municipalities put in the water, like chlorine and fluoride.
Okay.
The only thing is it takes water to an extremely like stale like just H2O, but you need to actually remineralize it. So a lot of people forget the remineralization step of water, of RO water. And so if you have a reverse osmosis system, just make sure you put a remineralization filter. Literally all you're doing is you're just percolating the water from the RO in through like a filter so that it just gets remineralized. And there's different remineralization packs that have different types of iron or whatever else you want inside there. That's the quickest way of doing it. If you live in an apartment, there's like desktop or countertop RO machines that you can just plug in and you just kind of fill it up with water.
If you were building like dream setup for like private house, like what would you do?
I would just do an RO setup, honestly. Yeah. I would just have an RO in my like incoming water line.
Yeah.
And honestly, like to go a step up, if you like cared about water wastage, what you could do is actually put in like a black water or gray water system that reduces your input water and then recycles your like dishwasher and like clothing water. And you can like many of them have RO there too. So you don't want to drink that, but you can like use that for your like lawn gardening or anything like that.
What about like hard water?
Hard water will get fixed with RO.
Okay.
Because the majority of it is TDS, total dissolved solids, or calcium or calcification.
Yeah.
That gets removed with the RO sensor, or with not the RO sensor, the RO machine.
Do you just drink water out of the tap, or like do you have like?
I have an RO machine at home.
Cool. Do you do that anywhere you live in the world, or like?
No, if I'm like traveling, I'll just.
No. I just meant like anywhere you lived in the world. Like, do you always have an RO machine, or?
No, this has like been a very new. Like, it's just come from a lot of the like studying I've done around water.
Is there one you'd plug?
No. I mean I have the. It's not Evoque. I forget the name. Like literally, just go onto Amazon and type in RO countertop machine, and it's like the blue one.
When are you going to go on Brian Johnson's podcast and talk all about like water purification?
I should, honestly.
Because like I feel like he would be like so geeked out on this.
Yeah, I should. Yeah.
Because I literally don't know anyone that like knows more about this than you.
Yeah, I should. We should. You know Brian Johnson?
I know someone that can ping you him.
We should get on Brian Johnson's pod. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, like he's always doing cool stuff. What does staying mentally stable look like for you? What's your early burnout warning system? And how do you keep long-term urgency water is like existential, like without frying your nervous system?
Meditation, I would say, is number one. And sleep is number one too.
Yeah. I wish I'd learned that like so much earlier, dude.
Yeah, it's crazy. I like, I mean, we were in San Francisco, but you like go to these VC events and then you like show up drunk at 2 o'clock
Yeah.
and then you're like hungover at 6
Yeah,
a.m.
you and I in our 20s in SF we're drinking a lot more. Like I don't drink anymore. I know
Yeah.
you don't drink. Like it's sleep maxing is the way to go.
Sleep maxing is the way to go.
No drinking and sleep maxing.
Yeah. And then actually like I've figured out meditation really helps
Love
me
meditation.
with that buffer in the morning.
Mhm.
I charge my phone outside. Honestly, like I feel like the doom notification, and not even doom notification, but just like the continuous barrage of notifications keeps my mind like contained and stuff. And so like if I'm on my phone, I'm on my phone. If I'm not, then I'm not. Like I just try to.
I turn off all my notifications on my phone, so even when I have it, I have to intentionally click in to get my notifications.
My like family gets mad at me because they're like, texting me. And so,
I let my wife and people ping through. You psycho.
They're turning everything
Just
off.
Yeah. Okay. If you were about to give a TED Talk today, what would it be about?
It would be on preventing the next day zero water issue. I feel like we are taking water for granted. And I have a podcast on water called Liquid Assets.
Yeah.
The more people that I interview from like policy to business are just like, we like water is totally underpriced. We have not like fixed up the infrastructure systems. Like you said, the pipes are 50, 70 years old. You look at Flint, Michigan. It would be on building the operating system for how we actually make sure that the next generations of water doesn't face a day zero event.
What would be like a day zero event?
We got close to one in South Africa where like literally you just go and turn the tap on and there's no water. Why?
Was that just from like a severe drought?
It was a severe drought issue in South Africa. You look at Michigan, right? Like maybe turning on the water and then you getting lead filled water, like also does you no good.
What I don't understand is why we aren't using like solar and desalinization a ton.
Desal just is very like
California and like all this other place, like all these places that have water shortages.
It's just a very high infra cost, and the energy
it's probably
cost really high.
Not the cheapest.
Yeah, and also I just think it's undervalued. Honestly, I just don't think it's on like the
Israel
the
does a bunch of desal, right?
They do a ton.
Yeah.
It's just not on the policy directive for the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
And like, that's kind of why I say like I think the U.S. just is waiting to have a day zero event, and that'll put everybody into like.
But I feel like we're so big and there's so many regional differences. Like wouldn't Flint, Michigan's water already be kind of a day zero event? Or like LA when there's a fire and they turn the fire hose and it like doesn't come on. Like that's a day zero event too, right? Like, like are there going to be regional day zero events or is it going to be like no water? Like tell me a bit about like where you see some of the like the highest risks.
Yeah. I mean, the U.S. is very regional. I mean, like you said, New York gets its water from the mountains. California gets it from, the Sacramento Valley or like from the Colorado. Day zero events will be different, but I just don't see U.S. and even state policy taking those to heart, right? Like you had the California fires. I mean, definitely the fire hydrant issue. Actually, one of the biggest issues in the California fires were a lot of the PVC pipe that's used melted, and that plastic got in the waterways. Like,
I mean,
that was
a buddy of mine surfs, and they were like, "Yeah, we can't even surf right now because like all the like all these awful chemicals are out in the water in the ocean."
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so but you don't see like LA really changing much. And
how big is a microplastic issue in water globally?
I think PFAS is probably a bigger issue than microplastics. But they're both pretty large issues. I think you're going to start seeing more. You're going to hear way more PFAS. So like for your audience, if you want to like bookmark the 4 letters PFAS.
Yeah.
We're going to see a lot more of that very soon.
And then what can we do to help and think about that? Like for ourselves, like at home, you already said to get a reverse, like an RO filter. Like, is there anything else we can do or think about?
Yeah, I think in water conservation, the bulk of the water is used by agriculture. Honestly, it's used to like grow and make our food.
Yeah.
The second largest user is actually industrial. So like a lot of our factories, a lot of the manufacturing, and then the third, very small, is actually just our own consumption, like people consumption itself.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I would love.
So you're basically saying don't make almond milk anymore.
Don't make almond milk. Like don't eat meat. Honestly, meat's a really
Ruthless.
big. Is like
you're gonna kill me, bro.
That's what I'm saying. Is like I think that's where like the wins come from water.
I mean, maybe like in the future when they can, like they're already growing steaks and stuff in labs. Like maybe that's like the way to go.
Yeah, and I think we're also just not optimized for the way that we use water in like the industrial and agricultural sectors. Like we're building data farms in like drought-prone desert.
Yeah.
Like maybe don't do that. I don't know. Like find a place
Yeah.
or like make sure there's
I like the
decel there or
idea.
something.
The
like
data farms in space, I think, are a great idea.
that's totally. You
But
could-
then you're gonna have like a space debris issue,
which could also be another problem. Yeah.
Everything has a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I love talking water. Loved having you on the pod. What's the thing you're most looking forward to as a dad and founder? Being a dad founder.
As a dad founder?
A dadder or downder.
Downder.
Yeah.
I need to get my son to work as quick as possible, just like my dad did. He needs to be coding up agents.
Oh shit!
As soon as he can type. No,
Well,
we're really looking forward to our son. I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, this is our first son, as it is with your daughter. We're super excited.
You learn what I'll say is like into the audience too is like it's important to have your family integrated with your business, and that's like the best advice I got from all these like prolific mentors in business I have. And like you learn even a couple weeks in, like I learned so much from her about being a better human and being a great CEO. So I hope you do the same for your son.
That's awesome.
And thank you for coming on the pod.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man.
Yeah.